There's all sorts of talk about there's two types of riders, those who've gone down and those who haven't gone down. Or it's not if, it's when. Or insert any other cliche you want here. But it happens to all of us at some point, I think. Plenty of people tell you they've never crashed a scooter, they've never crashed a motorcycle, and hey, more power to you. I was pretty lucky myself, but not that long ago, I had to do some replacing of the side panels on my scooter. So this is what happened to my scooter when I made a bit too aggressive of a turn, picked it up on that exhaust when I had the factory unit on, and spun the scooter around pretty good. We can see here, that's not terrible damage. I did some good scraping here, some scratches there, tore up the Royal Alloy logo a little bit. Now, I was fortunate, my dealer got me a great deal on a factory painted replacement panel. But ever since that moment, I thought to myself, well, it might have been nice to have something there to help protect the scooter a little bit. You know, I've had frame sliders on my motorcycles. I've currently got a Givy crash cage on my FZ8. My wife's got some of the Moto Guzzi crash bars on her V7 Racer. It's just a nice little added bit of protection to have something that's going to interfere with the ground touching your motorcycle or touching your scooter. Well, rather than end up with big scratches here and $200 to replace a panel, plus all the effort of putting this heat shielding back in, which let me tell you, wasn't all that much fun, I could have had something like this, which is the Prima Cowl Guard. Now, no one's promising this is going to save you any headache or any heartache or really prevent any sort of damage from happening to your scooter, whether it's a Royal Alloy, a genuine Buddy, a Vespa, a Buddy Kick 125, you name it, there's different guards like this, and Prima's a pretty popular brand. Now, I purchased these from Scooter Works. They shipped them right down to me. They arrived in a big box, but quite timely and for a very reasonable cost. I think it's about $100, maybe a couple dollars more. And these are going to bolt right onto the scooter. And that's going to give us not only some added vintage style, but maybe even some additional protection. Okay, so now we've got the correct side of our Prima Cowl Guards for the Royal Alloy here. And I'm going to show you just how easy they are to mount up. They're just going to bolt once here and once in the rear, right alongside the existing screws and bolts that are already in the Royal Alloy. They do use the same mount in the rear of the scooter as the factory side cowl does. And it's going to sit right about like this. Now again, I'm not promising this is going to do any sort of protection, but we can see it's going to mount up here on the top of our floorboard and then back here underneath our side guard. And that's going to give us this nice vintage look without being the full old school Lambretta come up over the top side panel guards, which I'd love, but I think you got to have them custom made or know somebody who can do some cool metal bending. I don't have that capability just yet. But I've got these, and we're going to mount them up today, show you how they look, and then talk a little bit about how maybe they'll do something for you in the event of an incident, let's say. Now, I told you I scraped the exhaust on mine. I did scrape the exhaust when I had my accident, and I spun the scooter around and flopped it onto the left side. So it was quite the experience. Fortunately, other than some scratching on the side panel and bending a rear brake lever, no real damage, nothing of note. But it did give me that kick in the pants I needed to buy just something to give me a little extra protection. This might have kept me from rubbing this beauty line here all across the concrete when I decided to make a turn like I was Scooter Rossi. But let's go ahead, let's talk about the tools we need, and then walk through what it's going to be like when we install this. As far as what tools we need for this project, very basic hand tools. We're going to need the appropriate size wrenches to remove our factory hardware on the back of our scooter. Mine, I've swapped over, so I need two 8mm wrenches. We're also going to need a number 2 Phillips head screwdriver, or if you prefer the battery-operated toys like I do, we're going to have our power screwdriver here. In addition to that, I've bought some new hardware. So just take a look. This is our factory size bolt for that rear cowl guard. It's an M5 by 10mm. I have purchased an M5 by 15mm bolt at Ace Hardware. Now I did this because it gives me just a little extra room to hang our cowl guard on when we mount it up to the scooter, and just makes things a little bit easier from my perspective. You could certainly use the factory hardware, but I chose to buy these new bolts. If you can, buy a flanged head bolt. They didn't have those in stock when I went, let's go ahead and take a look at what fasteners we're going to have to remove and then begin our job here. The first fasteners we're going to be removing on the scooter here are going to be the 2 Phillips head on either side of this floorboard hump. Not the 2 Phillips head here that hold our ribs in place, but just these 2 slightly largers. So you can come in with your screwdriver, pop it in, and you're just going to spin these out. Now they are held in by captive nuts underneath the scooter, so you don't have to worry about holding anything underneath there. They may be pretty tight from the factory, that's okay. Once you've got it loose, just pull it out, and we're going to flip it over and set it down right next to our hole. This does have that factory plastic washer on it. Now that we've done that, we're going to go to the back of the scooter and we're going to take a look at our next step. We're going to go ahead, we're going to slide our way around to the back of the scooter here, and we're going to work our way up underneath, and we're going to be removing the fastener right here that's holding on the side cowl at the rear of the scooter. So we'll back this out, and then we'll get the new bolt in place. So here's our fastener, and don't mind the purple, that's just the bit of wrap I put around the side. So let's go ahead and just put our wrenches on that for now, like so. And we're going to go ahead, break that loose, and undo the nut. Now if you're going to use your factory bolt, you can certainly use your factory bolt again, but as you can see, it's a pretty short little bit of bolt that sticks out. See if we can't get you in a little closer. Not a whole lot of bolts sticking out there. So I'm going to go ahead and replace that 10mm with the 15mm M5 bolt. So let's go ahead and remove that bolt. If it's easy to pull out, all the better for you. You just slide it out. We're going to take our M5 by 15. And just like that, we're now ready to mount our Prima guards on. I will point out it slides right over this. So let me grab that and give you a quick example of how it's going to mount up. When we go to place our cowl guards on, it's going to come in underneath here, how it's going to come on, and that little hole slides right over our bolt. A little easier to do when you're watching it, but just like that, it slides over our bolt, and that is how our Prima guard is going to be held in place. Since I've got it here, I'm going to go ahead and thread the nut on just a little bit to hold things in place. So I can take my nut, get it started on my bolt, and just spin it on a few turns to hold it there. So now we're going to move around to the floorboard and mount it in the other location. Looking at the scooter from the front now, certainly having a second person to hold your cowl guard in place would not be a bad thing. It's just me, so I pop out my little foot pegs and it gives me a place to rest it when I put our back bolt on. We're then going to come over here and we're going to mount up on this side. So we've got our hole the bolt goes into. We're going to line that plastic washer up over it, take our cowl guard, and get this set down right on top of that hole. And then take our bolt, and just like that, get it set into place. And you can do that finger tight, come in with a screwdriver. We're going to snug that up just a little bit. And with that in place and tightened, we've now got our cowl guard pretty well installed on the scooter. Now we've got it in place. It's a little loose at the rear, so we're getting that wobble. Once we tighten up the rear, we're going to come back here and tighten up the front. So let's take a moment and do just that. Again, based on the way I have it, I can use my little 8mm wrenches here. I'm going to put the closed end over that, and we're just going to tighten this down so that we have our cowl guard held in place nicely. And now, we're pretty snug on the rear here, so we come around to the front of the scooter again, grab our Phillips head, and we're just going to tighten this screw down again, taking as much of that play out of everything as we can. We've got our guard in place. It's not touching or interfering with anything, so we've got no metal on metal contact, And when we close our foot peg, it's a pretty good looking little piece of kit here. So you've got that in place. It does have that little bit of flex to it. And that flex is just because it's held on with one little welded tab here and that welded bracket back here. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and put you in the corner and we'll do the other side so you can see what it looks like standing off to the side of things. Okay, so looking at the right side of the scooter, again, pretty straightforward. Grab our screwdriver, undo our mount on the floorboard there, bring that all the way out. Now a stubby screwdriver, you'll keep from bumping into your metal as much, but it might take a little more energy to turn it out. Set that off to the side. We're gonna slide over to the rear of the scooter here, break loose our bolt, get that out of the way, and set this off to the side. We're gonna take our longer 15mm bolt now, feed that in just like that, and then pop our foot peg out. I love doing this because it makes the job a little bit easier to balance things. We can set it down like this, so we want to be gentle. It is a metal-bodied scooter. You don't want to smack things around too much. But come around this way, and you can just look right up into things. Line up your hole, slide that into place, and then just like we did before, start our nut. And you can see I am lifting up my Prima guard a little bit from the back here, just so that everything's lined up where I expect it to be. Get that started a little bit. And then we come around to the front of the scooter again. Line this guy up over the hole. Get our screw started. And tighten that guy down, just like we did on the other side. Make sure you're not cross-threading anything. You just want to get it tightened down. Now that that's tightened down, I'm going to slide back around to the rear here, and we're going to tighten up our bolt. And just like that, we've got the rear tightened nice and good. We'll come around and double check that the front is tight. And our cowl guards are installed. Again, close our foot peg, and I think these look really great on the Royal Alloy. I really like the way they look with the PM tuning exhaust as well. Gives it kind of those classic lines. But let's step back and take a look. And we can see right here, it's a good looking addition to the scooter. It doesn't really interfere with where your feet go at all, because I know I put my feet right about here on the scooter, even so far as to sit them forward, but it's behind this line. So it's not really getting in the way of where you'd place your feet. And it gives the scooter just kind of that vintage look. I'm a big fan of the way these look. They're a very easy install, as we just saw. And like that, you've changed the appearance of the Royal Alloy a little bit. Made it look even classier than it already does. We've got the Buddy Roughhouse from the Scooter Rescue Project over there. Should be up and running soon, but we took it off the bench so we could get to work on the Royal Alloy. With a pretty simple process, we've classed up our Royal Alloy a little bit more than it already was. A couple of hand tools and a few minutes of work, and we've installed our Prima side guards. Now again, I'm not saying they're going to prevent you from rashing this up should you tip the scooter over, should you have an accident or an off of some sort. But in the event it does, these might give you a little bit of protection, as well as protecting you from somebody coming up in a car and bumping into it, or people walking by. It's a solid metal scooter, but that does mean there's a little more opportunity for somebody to mess it up for you. I've had people bump into my scooter in a parking lot before. Maybe next time it'll give them something to think about while they're not so careful reversing. But with that said, really easy project, something nice and simple to install in your Royal Alloy, change the appearance a little bit, make it stand out that much more than the already classic looking Royal Alloy does. So hopefully you enjoyed it. So thanks for watching our modification to the Royal Alloy here. Stay tuned for more work and mods that we're going to do to the Royal Alloy. We're also talking about that Roughhouse 50 hiding over in the corner and the Scooter Rescue Project. Hope to see you again next time.